I use buyer's agents for 7 of my own purchases. So got a good understanding about how they work, the things that I liked that they did, and areas I identified as well where I thought there could be improvements from the customer side. So a lot of when I built my business, I built it from the outside in, thinking about what was my own experience of using buyer's agents.
Welcome to the Buyer's Agent Institute show. The purpose of the show is to bring awareness to buyer's agents, to bring awareness to the career opportunities that the buyer's agent sector is providing people, to bring awareness to the value that buyer's agents are providing to people who need help with buying property. Our goal of the show is to dive and strip back the stories and the journeys of remarkable buyer's agents who are paving the way forward in one of the fastest growing real estate career trends right now. Our guest today is Jay Anderson. Jay's career in property investing started back in 2010, and since 2010, he has built a multi-million-dollar commercial and residential property portfolio. His career and his professional background started in the hotel industry, and his family have been investing in hotels for generations. Jay right now is running his new buyer's agent business, Jay Anderson Property. I'm really excited today to dive into Jay's story because he's been growing like crazy. I'm excited to introduce Jay. Welcome, Jay.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. I remember when we first spoke on the phone, I think you were on the way to a fishing trip or something like that. Yeah,
that's right.
And I remember when we just initially spoke, I just knew you were going to crush it as a buyer's agent. You just had property running through your blood. You were working, I think, in IT in the hotel industry, and I was like, you're going to be out of there soon.
Yeah, I remember that conversation vividly.
Yeah, and it's exciting, especially when I'm talking to people like you who are super skilled at buying property for yourself and you love it, you live and breathe it. I can just feel and I just have this knowing that you're just going to crush it when you jump into the buyer's agent shoes.
Yeah, and it's no looking back. It's been an amazing journey so far, and I'm so glad that I had that opportunity to have that initial conversation with you, and then the follow-up meetings, and then going through the Buyer's Agent Institute. It's something I wish I did years ago.
Did you know much about buyer's agents before we spoke?
I did. I use buyer's agents for 7 of my own purchases, so got a good understanding about how they work, the things that I liked that they did, and areas I identified as well where I thought there could be improvements from the customer side. So a lot of when I built my business, I built it from the outside in, thinking about what was my own experience of using buyer's agents, what did I really enjoy, and where did I think there was areas for improvement. So I kind of built it from that perspective.
Yeah, nice. And I do remember when we first spoke as well, because you've got a few kids and you got your family to look after, and you got a lot of mortgages because you've got a big portfolio. And making that transition is always a challenge. And I think you set out to maybe jump into the buyer's agent space within 12 months or after 12 months, and you seem to get there a lot quicker, right?
Yeah, so the original plan was to kind of do it part-time for 12 to 24 months. I think I kind of started doing it part-time May last year and went full-time in October. In that space as well, there was a 6-week European trip as well. So
yeah, nice. And I remember as well, I mean, obviously you've got a lot of experience with investing, both commercial and resi. And then you mentioned that you weren't going to look at the owner-occupier market. And I said, hey, just maybe give it a go, give it a feel. And I know now you're quite busy with owner-occupier clients.
Yeah, and that's been a fascinating experience. I remember the conversation we had was around, because I'm come from an investment point of view and very analytical, I can show you the data and the research explaining why this property makes sense and it's suited to you for an investment. When it becomes owner-occupier, all that information's out the window, and now it's purely emotional. And I just felt, well, I'm not a salesperson, I'm not from a sales background, and I'm very data and research focused, so maybe that's not an avenue for me. And I remember you said, look, don't shut the door on it, just try it once, because it can be quite fulfilling. And I'll never forget, the first one I purchased was for a lady and her daughter, and the amount of messages and phone calls I had following on from that about how I've managed to buy them their dream home that they never thought possible. And, you know, the feedback when you help someone buy their family home, their dream home is incredible.
Yeah, it's a good feeling. I feel like you can develop a deeper rapport and relationship with the client because there is so much emotion going in, right?
Yeah. And it's, you know, when you can really connect and identify their non-negotiables, their deal breakers, what's important to them in a home. You know, property is such an amazing thing because it means something different to every person, you know, especially when you're talking about a family home. So when you can really identify and map out what are the key things that are important to them and then start presenting properties that are a perfect match to them, you know, you can see the look in their eye that they're just going, yeah, like this is the right decision.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously you've got a very deep connection with property and investing and the data and the research. Obviously, there's this thing around Australia where everyone loves property. You know, it's very talked about in the papers, it's everywhere. How do you know when you're passionate about property? Because you started in 2010. So, I mean, how did you know?
So I guess the first property I purchased, which is almost directly behind where we are now, one of my good friends was doing quite successfully in property investing and developing, and I was kind of watching what he was doing, and there was the initial interest in the beginning. He ended up wanting to buy this unit, but his finance fell through, so he kind of presented it to me. I got lucky on the first one, came out of the first one thinking I was an expert at the time because I just made all this money. Took me 10 months to realise that, hey, I'm not an expert, and if I want to become an expert, I need to dedicate as much time, energy and resources to learn everything I can about what makes a successful investor, and more importantly, what makes a market tick. You know, what are some fundamentals or some key market signals that have an impact on a property market, and why do markets sit flat? Why do some go up? What's happening behind the scenes that's causing this? So from that point, it basically became a full-blown obsession to work out exactly what was happening and why. So we went and bought the next one, and then it just fascinated me even further. So I started going back historically. So I went back to 1970 and then had a look on year, what was happening in each market around Australia at the time. What was property prices doing? Were they going up, sitting flat? What was population growth? What was any major infrastructure projects? Employment, so unemployment, new job creation. What was happening in each of these markets to see if there was any correlation between different data sets and property movement. So that was well before I even thought about doing it as a business. That's when it became a full-blown obsession and passion that I'm sitting up late at night, you know, running numbers on a property, even though I wouldn't be able to buy it at that time, or maybe couldn't even afford it at that time. I was still running the numbers on it just out of the enjoyment.
Yeah, so I think you definitely sit in a small minority of people who are going back to 1970s and you're drilling into all that data. But do you think for the average person out there, just, you know, going on real estate and domain, let's just say you're running, you're a banker and you're spending your days not focused on your work and you're looking on real estate domain, does that constitute that you're super passionate about property, or what do you?
Probably not, but I think it's an early indicator. You know, if you're spending time, you know, maybe outside of just when you're thinking about buying a property, if you're actually on realestate.com looking at different markets, I think that's certainly an early indication that there's some fire in there.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm incredibly lucky that now I get to do for my job what's my passion, what I was doing before I was being paid to do it, you know. So certainly, if you do have that inkling inside you, I think definitely chase it and explore it and try and get a better understanding into, I guess, what this industry does and how we help people.
How does it feel living your hobby now?
Incredible. The hardest thing at the moment is I need to force myself to switch off. And it's not because of anything else, it's because I just enjoy it so much and there's so much drive there. It's an obsession. You know, I get up first thing in the morning and it's straight on, it's into it. Whether it's actively searching for a property for an existing client or if it's just looking at new markets, what's happening, what changes have been happening, and then going back to other clients where their existing properties are, where they've purchased before, running numbers on that, looking at my own portfolio. It's just, yeah, it's what I call as my sport. It's my sport, it's my hobby.
Yeah, and obviously it's your first proper business that you've been running yourself, correct?
So we've had some motel businesses, but yeah, this is the first one that I've been doing on my own. Yeah.
What have been the challenges? It's difficult running any business. Have you come across key challenges that?
Certainly, probably just where to dedicate the time. You know, there's so much to do. I'm a to-do list person, so I write out to-do lists, and I think at the moment I've got a large whiteboard, both sides are full. So it's prioritising, what's important, what's going to help grow the business, looking at, dollar productive, non-dollar productive. I do a thing called a urgent important matrix. Let's focus on the things that are urgent and important right now. The things that are not important, not urgent, we should look at delegating or outsourcing or scheduling for the future. Because I think if you don't have a structured approach like that, it's very easy. As humans, we're like the path of least resistance. So a lot of times we can be drawn to the easy, quick tasks rather than focusing on what are going to be the big gains. And they're often the most difficult tasks that we need to complete.
I like that, the urgent. I think that's important as part of just really attacking those high priority tasks first.
Yeah.
Because we can get dragged in focusing on those lower priority, and we just end up kind of climbing backwards.
Yeah, and I think in the first couple of months that I was full-time with the business, I was trying to, be the marketing guy, the accounting guy, wearing all these hats. So I was doing lots of little tasks and probably wasn't getting the fast enough traction that I wanted to. And that was when I took a step back and thought, what's the priorities here? What are going to give me the biggest wins? And then I started looking at, outsourcing and delegating some of the other tasks.
We caught up for lunch a few months ago, and we were having a chat just around your business and your model and how you're growing, and you got so many clients. And what struck out for me was that you've got an incredible business model. It's fully referral based. So you've got these trusted partners, these financial planners, accountants, mortgage brokers, these group of people who really trust you with their clients. And I think it's amazing just in such a short period of time. Obviously, you've got so much skill and knowledge in the space, but you're building such a robust business, and it's super impressive.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so 95% of my business is referral based at the moment. I've got a meeting directly after this with a financial planning firm in the city, sitting in their boardroom with one of their clients who wants to start investing some of their cash they have into building a property portfolio. So it's incredibly honouring when a financial planning firm invites you into their office, into their boardroom to talk to one of their clients. It's a pretty special feeling.
Yeah, they obviously view you as their internal buyer's agent.
Yep,
basically.
that's correct.
Under your brand, right?
Yep, that's correct.
Before we kicked off this interview, you mentioned you jumped in and said, "Hey, I've got to chat to you about something."
Yep.
And it's happened to me, and I've seen it happen a lot in the industry. You had a client who, we don't need to go into the specifics, but you had a client who purchased a property without you.
Yep.
And obviously, as buyers agents, we would hope in our contracts we've got a clause that stipulates that we are protected if the client does go behind our back and buy. How are you going to deal with it?
To be followed up. I'm not sure. So. Obviously don't want to burn any bridges, but obviously, we do have that protection in our agreement to prevent, that from happening. So it's probably going to start off with just a general conversation with the client to find out what happened and why and what's the approach moving forward.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, you want to keep it amicable.
Yeah, certainly.
Are you buying a lot off market at the moment? I know you buy a lot in Queensland, right?
Yeah, so we're, in this month we've bought properties in Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria. Out of the ones we've purchased, probably about 40-something%'s been off market.
It's a good number.
Good number, yeah. Perfect example of that is once we identify an area or streets that we want to target. 3 weeks ago we did letterbox drop to 423 houses on streets that we wanted to target. Got good results from that. So within 7 days of dropping those letters, we had 5 phone calls from owners on those streets.
Wow, vendors calling you direct.
So, when you're taking the proactive approach of trying to find off-market deals, I've got Francis up in Queensland working for me, so he's super active on the ground as well, trying to find these off-market deals. There's a lot more to it than just calling up an agent saying, hey, do you have any off-market properties? It's about, really being proactive and understanding the area and approaching those vendors.
The agents must know you pretty well now.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a very important relationship to build and maintain. And it's good to have an understanding of how that agent works, how they like to be approached. It's about connecting with the person as much as the business. If you spend a little bit of time, have a look at what properties that agent has listed on the market. If you call them, rather than just asking for, hey, do you have any listings coming up or any off market like this, actually spend time, have a look at what they've got on the market at the moment. You might say, hey, John, got a client interested in a 3-bedder in these suburbs. I know you've got 123 Smith Street. However, that's a little bit old for them. They're looking at something a little bit more modern, something like 427 John Parade that you sold 3 months ago. That's the kind of property they want. If you spend a bit of time to kind of understand what they do, and it certainly gets you further ahead. How often are you speaking with your clients as you're working through the buyer's agent journey? Is it a daily thing? How's your communication? I was very structured when I first started the business, and kind of, hey, this is the way I want to operate it and the way I want to run it. I quickly learned that just because that's how I want to do it doesn't mean that's how the client wants to receive it. So it's right in the beginning, we try and get an understanding of what sort of expectations they have, what are they comfortable with in terms of communication. Some people prefer a phone call, some people prefer a text message or email, understanding what are their expectations from this, how do we normally work, and then we find a happy balance from there. So, I have some clients, time poor professionals, not interested in basically regular updates. They just want to know when we've got a potential property that's a match, send it through to them, let them know what it's going to take to buy it and what needs to be done. And then I've got other ones who are a lot more active within the process and want to understand which markets we're looking at and why. Even the vetting process early on with the properties, they're really trying to learn through the process as well, which I connect well with, because when I was using buyer's agents for my own purchase, I was super interested in going, well, hey, why are you doing this way? So, I'm very open to sharing that with my clients.
Yeah, I would expect a lot of the astute clients would be trying to really pick your brain to learn about, your processes and what you're doing, and as you were saying, vetting and just how you're coming up with all your research. I'm sure they must dive into a lot of questions with you.
Certainly, and sometimes you can learn a lot more from the properties that you reject than the ones that you proceed with as well. So that's an interesting dynamic that a lot of clients are interested in. What properties have we looked at and have rejected, and what are the reasons why?
Yeah, you were mentioning as well before that you were looking at a property for a client, and then obviously did some due diligence, came back, building and pest wasn't too good, so you have to walk away at times, right? Yeah,
and that was an interesting one, because my client was not interested and very strongly against getting a building inspection done. So they had looked at 3 properties before that, which they had paid for a building and pest, and decided not to proceed with. One missed out at auction, the other 2 not to proceed with. So they were thinking about the cost of a building and pest inspection report. They actually had an associate of theirs go and look at the property as well. I very politely said, look, I understand and I respect, your associate, but they're not a builder. They're not a pest inspector. Neither are we. We can go and have a look, take photos, do a video for you. We're just really looking at the bones and the cosmetic side of it. But I strongly insist, we get a building inspection report done. They were still very anti it, because they were wanting to spend $300,000 renovating this property as well. It was about a $1.1 million purchase. We pushed, they ended up doing it. Building inspection report came back. They found a little trail of termites in the carport. Followed that trail, and the termites were all through the building. So we managed to crash the contract based on the terms we'd negotiated in the contract, and managed to walk away from that property with no financial cost apart from the cost of the report.
Would have been an expensive mistake, right? Expensive. And a lot of people do it. Not who are using buyer's agents, but just a lot of punters, buyers out there.
Yeah.
Just some of them don't really even look at a contract for sale either. It's just insane.
Yeah, and I'm seeing that more and more in Sydney, where, now the heat's starting to come back into the Sydney market. People are missing out on properties at auctions. You might miss out at 4 or 5 or 6 properties. You've had a conveyancer review the contract. You've had building and pest done. You miss out on 5 or 6 properties. This adds up quite quickly. So sometimes they get a bit frustrated with it all, and then they find one that they really like, and they just want to jump in without doing that sufficient due diligence beforehand. So certainly risky.
Yeah, and so you're focusing commercial and resi together? And you're doing a bit of hotel stuff?
Yeah, so on the commercial side, I've got a really strong preference for both accommodation and medical assets. Okay. So accommodation side, because that's my family's background. You know, we've been buying and investing in motels since the late 1950s. Got 2 motels myself, so you know that's a market I understand very, very well. And then the medical space, you know, they're anchor tenants. It's a non-discretionary spend for Australians to use medical and healthcare services, long-term leases. The tenants in place are high-income earners as well. So it all looks very good on that medical front as well.
Are you finding there's a lot of demand for commercial clients?
Yeah, certainly. That's probably the interest level's growing more than any other sector. And a lot of it, I guess it's a mix of 2 different types of people. One is sophisticated investors who might have, you know, I had a phone call with a gentleman last week, he had 13 properties, very savvy, sophisticated investor. They're all resi. He's now getting to the point where he wants to now start generating a nice cash flow because he's thinking about retirement in 10 years' time. So wants to jump into commercial, but he's very good on him for realising that it's a very different space, commercial and residential. They're 2 completely different beasts. So he's looking at signing up to help him secure a commercial property. And he's one of the people that wants to learn about what we look at and how we do it with commercial space. So it's the sophisticated investors wanting more cash flow, and the other one is baby boomers transitioning into retirement. A lot of times they're asset rich, they might be high income earners in their day job, in their career, are wanting to transition into retirement but want to maintain the same lifestyle that they've got. To do that, they need to be able to replace their income, so looking at getting commercial property.
It's phenomenal that you're doing both, and you understand both very well. I typically see, I mean, before starting my buyer's agent business, I was focusing in commercial at Charter Hall, then I did resi a bit there, but typically you've got someone who's really strong in the resi or the commercial, and it's great that you really understand both, and you've invested in both yourself. You've been in the trenches yourself, both, and I think it's very valuable to a client, because if they do want to diversify and they are very focused in resi, I mean, you can just educate them around the opportunities of maybe looking and, you know, changing direction, right?
Yeah, and that's, you know, I do have some clients approach that are unsure. Do they want to go the resi way or the commercial way? And we can take that holistic approach of saying, well, let's have a look at where you are, where you want to go, what you want to achieve, what you've currently got, and then let's make a bit of a strategic decision about, we can even do a bit of a 10-year plan. Or maybe let's introduce some resi now, get the capital growth, convert that into commercial later on.
Yeah. Since starting the business, obviously, I'm not sure how the flexibility worked when you were in your previous role before you started your buyer's agent business. What have you noticed in starting your own business? Obviously, we work bloody hard as entrepreneurs and running a buyer's agent business, but have you been able to spend more time with your family? Because I know you've got a few kids.
Yeah, so certainly the number of hours I work is longer, and I think that's an old saying that entrepreneurs work 80 hours a week so they don't have to work 40 hours for somebody else. But it's at my choice on how many hours I put in, but it certainly has given me more flexibility around my family, that I can choose when I work, when I won't. An example of that is, Fridays at 11 o'clock my kids do swimming lessons, so I head down there, go to swimming lessons with them. Today's Halloween, so I'm going to head home early, pick the kids up from childcare and go trick-or-treating with them. So it certainly gives you that flexibility around time.
Yeah, and what do you do to stay motivated?
I always focus on growth activities, so both personal growth. I always try and challenge myself to try and learn something new every month. So I think it helps expand the mind, keeps you focused, and keeps you growing as a person and a business. So an example, one of my things that I want to learn this month is speed reading. So photographic speed reading, it's just something I came across, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to dedicate a little bit of time, a couple times a week, and just learn that. And that helps me just expand my mind outside of what I am doing and helps me move forward. And outside of that, when I originally started the business, a lot of people talk about the 5-year goal. What's the 5-year goal? One of my business coaches said, forget that 5-year goal. 5-year goals don't mean anything. You put it out there and it's a dream, it's a wish. All we need to focus on is the next 90 days. Let's map out what you want to achieve in the next 30 days and the next 90 days, and that is your laser focus. And if you do that, you'll be much further ahead when that 5 years comes than if you're just aiming for that dream.
I love that. Yeah, I work on 90 days as well. I think it's very important. Yeah. Where can people find you?
So any of the social media channels, or just Google. So Jay Anderson, Jay, jayanderson.com.au. On all the social media channels, got a website up there as well. Or they can give me a call, 0410 746 200.
Awesome. I've really enjoyed chatting with you. You've built an awesome business, and just seeing how you've transpired since we first spoke. I knew it was going to happen, but I guess it's just amazing seeing you living your hobby now. It's just great, mate. So well done.
No, thank you. One big thanks to both you and what you've done with the Buyers Agent Institute, because that's a huge component of being able to get me and my business to where it is at the moment. It's been invaluable. So thank you.
I hope you enjoyed the interview. You can check out Jay on his website at jayanderson.com.au. And for those of you who do have an interest in resi or commercial across Australia, Jay is exceptionally talented and skilled and very knowledgeable, and he's invested his own money into these asset classes. See you next week.